The great hall of the alien palace was filled with golden light. Tall crystal pillars reached high into the ceiling. Strange banners of silver and blue hung on the walls. Hundreds of alien nobles sat in silence, waiting for the king to speak. At the center of the hall stood one human. His clothes were simple compared to the shining robes of the aliens. He was tall, but in that place he looked small. His dark eyes were calm, but his silence made the nobles whisper. To them, a human in the palace was rare. To some, it was insulting. The three alien sisters entered the hall with laughter on their lips. They were daughters of a powerful lord. Their hair shone like fire. Their skin carried markings of noble blood. They walked together like hunters who had found weak prey. When their eyes fell on the human, they stopped. Then the eldest sister smiled with cruel delight. "Look at this creature," she said, her voice loud enough for all to hear. "A fragile human in our sacred hall." The second sister covered her mouth as she laughed. "Does he not look lost? Perhaps he came here by mistake. Perhaps he wandered in like a dog searching for scraps." The youngest sister leaned closer, her eyes cold. "Or maybe the king has grown desperate. To call a human here, how low has our empire fallen?" Their laughter echoed through the hall. Many nobles smiled, some even laughed with them. The human stood still. He did not bow, he did not reply. He simply looked at them with steady eyes. His silence seemed to make the insult sharper. The eldest sister circled him slowly, as if he were no more than a weak animal. She pointed at his hands. "See how soft they are. These are not the hands of warriors. These are not the hands that can hold a blade." The second sister leaned forward, her voice filled with mockery. "Tell me, human, when danger comes, do you hide behind walls? Do you cry for others to protect you?" The youngest laughed again. "Perhaps he is here to entertain us. Perhaps he can dance like a fool for our court." Their words were knives meant to cut pride. Yet the human's face did not change. He looked at them, and for a brief moment his gaze made the youngest sister step back. There was no fear in his eyes, only something she could not name. Still, the eldest raised her chin high. "We are sisters of noble blood. You are nothing. You should kneel before us." The hall grew louder with whispers. Some nobles waited for the human to bow. Others waited for him to be thrown out. But he did not move. He stood tall, even as three powerful daughters mocked him. The sisters grew angry at his silence. The second one hissed, "Do you not hear us? Or are humans too simple to understand insult?" The eldest raised her hand, ready to strike him across the face. The youngest's lips curved into a cruel smile. The human's fate seemed sealed in that moment, but before the hand could fall, a deep voice filled the hall. Enough. The laughter, the whispers, the cruel smiles, everything died at once. The king had spoken. On his throne of black stone, the king rose. His eyes were sharp, burning like twin stars. He looked not at the human, but at the three sisters. His voice carried across the hall like thunder. "You insult one who stands in my hall," the king said. "You shame yourselves before my throne." The sisters froze. Their faces turned pale. They bowed at once, their voices shaking. "Forgive us, my king, we only meant to amuse." The king's gaze grew colder. "Amusement?" He raised his hand and silence fell heavier than stone. "You forget your place. You forget your duty, and now your fate will change because of your tongue." Gasps rose from the nobles. The sisters trembled. The human finally looked up at the king, but his expression stayed calm. The king's eyes narrowed. His voice was low, but it cut through the hall like a blade. "Three daughters of arrogance, one human of silence. Let us see where this path leads." And with those words, the air in the hall grew heavy with unseen weight. The sisters, once proud and laughing, now stood in fear. The human remained silent, but something strange flickered in his eyes, something that made the nobles uneasy. The insult had been spoken. The punishment had begun. The great hall remained silent after the king's voice thundered across the chamber. The nobles dared not whisper. The three sisters stood frozen in place, their proud smiles now gone, their bodies trembling. Never before had they been scolded in front of so many. Their father, a powerful lord, watched from the side with shame burning in his eyes. The king stepped down from his black throne. Each step echoed on the crystal floor, heavy and slow, as if the hall itself carried his judgment. His long cloak dragged behind him like a shadow. When he stopped in front of the sisters, they lowered their eyes to the ground, too afraid to meet his gaze. "You mock the human," the king said, his voice low but sharp. You speak with arrogance and you believe yourselves untouchable. But arrogance blinds the mind. Arrogance weakens the heart. And today arrogance has betrayed you. The eldest sister pressed her forehead to the floor. My king, forgive us. It was a mistake of words. We did not mean harm. The king's eyes narrowed. A mistake? No, words reveal truth. And the truth is this: you see humans as less. You see yourselves as greater. That is your crime. The second sister dared to raise her head. Her voice shook as she spoke. We are loyal to the crown. We never wish to shame your rule. But the king cut her short with a wave of his hand. Silence. Loyalty is not in your tongue. It is in your actions. And today your actions have revealed your pride, your disrespect, your weakness. The youngest sister could not stop her tears. Please, king, do not cast us out. Do not dishonor our family. The king's face grew colder, harder than stone. He turned slowly and looked at the human. The man had not moved, had not spoken. His silence filled the air like a hidden storm. The king studied him for a long moment, and then he looked back at the three sisters. Your punishment will not be exile. Your punishment will not be death. No, death is easy. Pride is harder to break. The sisters held their breath. Nobles leaned forward, eager to hear. You will serve him, the king said at last, pointing at the human. His voice carried like iron. From this day you will walk beside him, obey him, protect him. For 7 trials his life will be your duty. His command will be your law. His survival will be your burden. The hall erupted in shock. Nobles gasped, some cried out in disbelief. Daughters of noble blood serving a human? It was unthinkable. The sisters' faces turned pale as marble. The eldest stammered, My king. No, please. Anything but this. Not to serve a human. The king's eyes blazed with fire. You dare question my command? His voice rose, shaking the very pillars of the hall. You mocked a guest in my hall. Now you will learn the weight of humility. You will learn what it means to kneel not before power but before honor. The sisters fell silent, too terrified to speak again. Their hearts burned with shame. The nobles looked at them with pity, some with cruel smiles. The punishment was worse than exile. It was humiliation. The human finally lifted his head. His voice was calm but strong enough to reach the hall. I did not ask for this. All eyes turned to him. It was the first time he had spoken. His tone was steady, neither proud nor weak. The king looked at him with respect. I know, but fate does not ask. Fate chooses. The human nodded slowly, accepting without question. His calmness unsettled the sisters. Why did he not resist? Why did he not refuse? A human should have begged for mercy, yet this man stood as if he had expected it all along. The king raised his hand. It is done. The trials will begin at dawn. Guards, prepare the way. The sisters bowed their heads, tears hidden behind their hair. The human stood tall, silent once more. The nobles whispered again, their voices filled with wonder and fear. The king returned to his throne, his cloak flowing behind him like a river of night. He sat with authority carved into his face. His final words echoed through the hall. 3 daughters of pride, 1 human of silence. Together you will face what comes. Together you will learn what fate is written. And when the trials are over, you will not be the same. The great doors of the hall closed with a thunderous boom. The sisters' hearts pounded with dread. The human walked forward, his steps calm, his eyes unreadable. And in that moment, every noble in the hall knew. Something greater was coming. Something the empire had never seen before. The king's judgment was not just punishment. It was the beginning of a story that would change their world forever. The palace gates opened with a deep groan as night fell. The 3 sisters, once proud and untouchable, now walked behind the human in silence. Their faces were pale, their lips pressed tight. Each of them felt the weight of shame. The nobles' whispers still echoed in their ears, mocking laughter at their fall from grace. Guards stood at the sides of the gates, their eyes filled with disbelief. Daughters of a noble house reduced to servants? It was unthinkable. Yet the king's word was law. No one dared to challenge it. The sisters felt their anger burn like fire in their veins, but fear kept them silent. The human walked ahead with calm steps. He did not look back at them, nor did he speak. His silence was heavier than words. The eldest sister clenched her fists. In her heart, she still believed this was beneath her. She whispered to her sisters, her voice sharp, "This is madness. We are noble daughters. How can we serve him?" The second sister's eyes were wet with tears, but she answered in a hushed tone, If we disobey, the king will destroy us. We must obey, at least for now. The youngest sister's voice trembled. But why him? Why a human? Of all punishments, why this shame? Their questions carried no answers. The human kept walking, steady, calm, as if the world's judgment did not touch him. His silence made them uneasy. It was easier to hate someone who shouted, easier to despise someone who begged. But this man gave them nothing. At the edge of the palace grounds, the king's captain of guards stopped them. His armor glowed under the moonlight, and his voice was like steel. By order of the king, you will travel at dawn. 7 trials await you beyond these walls. The path is dangerous. The task is not survival alone, it is obedience. Fail, and you will answer to the king himself. The eldest sister tried to speak, her pride not yet broken. Captain, do you not see the insult in this? 3 daughters of noble blood sent to serve a— Silence, the captain barked. His eyes hardened. Your tongues brought you here. Do not let them dig your graves. The sisters fell silent. The captain turned to the human. And you? Do you understand your role? The man finally spoke, his voice calm and steady. I do. Then speak it, the captain ordered. The human raised his head, his dark eyes reflecting the moonlight. They serve me. For 7 trials, their fate is tied to mine. My command is their duty. My survival is their burden. This is the king's order. The words struck the sisters like chains wrapping around their necks. The captain gave a single nod. Good. At dawn, the first trial begins. Rest while you can. You will need your strength. The guards left and silence fell again. The sisters sat together beneath the cold stars. Their anger boiled inside them, but they did not dare speak loud. Finally, the eldest broke the silence, her voice bitter. I will never bow to him, never. When this is over, I will regain my honor. I will prove this was nothing but humiliation. The second sister shivered. And if we fail? If the king turns his wrath upon us? The youngest whispered, her eyes on the human. Look at him. He is not afraid. Why? He should be trembling before us, yet he walks as if he knows the path already. The eldest scoffed. Perhaps he is too simple to understand the danger. But the youngest shook her head. No, there is something else. Did you see how the king looked at him? It was not pity. It was respect, as if the king sees something in him that we cannot. The human sat a short distance away, his back against a stone wall, his eyes closed in silence. But though he appeared calm, the sisters felt an invisible weight around him, like a storm hidden beneath the surface. The night passed slowly. The sisters barely slept, their thoughts tangled in fear and pride. The human remained still, unmoved, as if guarding secrets they could not guess. When the first light of dawn touched the sky, the sound of horns shook the air. The palace gates opened once more. The guards stood ready. The captain pointed toward the dark wilderness beyond the walls. The first trial begins. Step forward. The sisters looked at each other with dread. Their lives, their honor, their future, all now tied to the one they had mocked. The human rose without hesitation. His eyes met the horizon, steady and unbroken. Without a word, he stepped into the unknown. And though the sisters followed with heavy hearts, a question burned inside them. What secret did this human carry, that even the king would command them to serve him? The sun rose red over the horizon as the human stepped through the palace gates. Behind him, the 3 sisters followed, their pride hidden under forced silence. The great city of shining towers faded quickly behind them. Ahead lay only wasteland, rock, sand, and endless shadows stretching into the unknown. The first trial had begun. The human walked with steady pace, not too fast, not too slow. He carried no weapon, only a small pack at his side. The sisters noticed this and whispered among themselves. Does he think he can survive with nothing? The eldest muttered. The second sister narrowed her eyes. Perhaps he believes we will protect him. Perhaps he wishes to test us. The youngest shook her head. No, look at him. He walks as if he has walked this road before. For hours they traveled across the barren land. The heat grew harsh, the air dry, the ground cracked under their steps. Strange shadows moved in the distance, creatures watching, waiting. The sisters' fine clothes, once symbols of wealth, now felt heavy and useless. Sweat covered their faces. The human, however, showed no weakness. He did not complain, did not slow. His calm silence gnawed at the sisters' pride. Finally, the eldest could not bear it. She stepped forward and spoke with anger. Human, do you not hear us? Do you not see this as death? Say something. Tell us why the king has tied our fate to yours." The man stopped. Slowly he turned his head. His dark eyes met hers, sharp and steady. His voice was quiet, yet it carried through the still air. "Because pride is heavy, and until you put it down it will crush you." The sisters froze at his words. The eldest felt her anger burn hotter. But before she could reply, the ground beneath them rumbled. From the cracks in the earth, monstrous shapes rose. Beasts with skin like stone, eyes burning like fire, and jaws wide enough to crush bone. Their roars split the silence. The wasteland had awakened. The sisters drew their blades, their noble training still sharp. They stood ready, fear tightening their hearts. The eldest shouted, "Stay behind us, human. You cannot fight these." But the human did not move back. He stepped forward, placing himself between the sisters and the beasts. His calm face showed no fear. The first creature charged. Dust rose as its massive body thundered toward them. The sisters cried out, but the human raised his hand. He stood tall, his voice firm and steady. "Hold." The creature stopped mid-charge, its claws sinking into the ground. Its fiery eyes locked with his. For a heartbeat, the world stood still. Then the beast snarled and leapt again. The sisters struck with their blades, sparks flying against the creature's stone-like skin. Their strikes slowed it, but not enough. The monster swung its massive arm, throwing the eldest to the ground. She screamed as pain shot through her body. The beast raised its claw, ready to crush her. The nobles watching from far towers would have thought this was her end. But the human moved. Fast, precise, unstoppable. He grabbed a sharp rock from the ground and drove it into the creature's burning eye. The beast roared in pain, thrashing wildly. The human pushed with all his strength, forcing the stone deeper until the monster fell back, howling into the dust. The eldest gasped, staring at him in shock. This man, this human she had called weak, had saved her life. Another beast charged from the side. The second sister swung her blade, but it knocked her weapon away. She stumbled, helpless. Before the creature could strike, the human's voice rang out. "Stand together." The sisters regrouped, moving as one beside him. The youngest thrust her blade into the creature's leg. The second cut across its chest. The eldest, still weak, managed to strike its neck. The human grabbed its horn, pulling with fierce strength until the beast crashed to the ground. The wasteland grew silent again. The monsters retreated, dragging their broken bodies back into the cracks. Dust filled the air, and the sisters stood gasping for breath. The human wiped the blood from his hand. He turned to the sisters, his face calm once more. "You see now, survival does not care about blood or pride. You live because we fought together. Remember this." The eldest stared at him, her pride broken by the memory of his hand saving her. The second sister's eyes softened with something close to respect. The youngest watched him with quiet awe. For the first time, none of them laughed. None of them mocked. Their hearts were heavy, but their minds began to change. The human looked to the horizon. His voice was calm, steady, unshaken. "This is only the beginning. The first trial is done. More await us." And without another word, he walked on, leaving the sisters to follow. Behind them, the whispers of the wasteland carried through the wind. The trials had begun, and fate was no longer in their hands. Night had fallen over the wasteland. The battle against the stone-skinned beasts still burned fresh in the sisters' minds. Their bodies ached from cuts and bruises. Their pride was more wounded than their flesh. Yet they were alive because of the human. The group stopped near the remains of an old ruin, broken walls half buried in sand. The human set down his small pack. Without asking, he began to build a fire. His movements were calm, practiced as if he had done this countless times before. Sparks rose, and soon the flames glowed against the dark. The sisters sat together, silent. None of them dared mock him now. The eldest kept her arms folded, but her eyes often drifted toward him, full of conflict. The second sister nursed her arm, bandaging a cut, her expression quiet. The youngest watched the human closely, her gaze filled with curiosity. At last, it was the youngest who spoke. Her voice was soft, but it carried through the night. "Why did you save us?" The fire crackled. The human looked at her, his eyes steady. For a moment he said nothing. Then in a calm voice he answered, "Because you are alive." The eldest frowned. "That is no answer. You had no reason to save us. We insulted you, humiliated you. You could have let us die. Yet you risked yourself. Why?" The man turned his gaze to the flames. His voice was quiet, but each word carried weight. "Because I am human." The sisters exchanged puzzled looks. To them it was no answer at all. Yet something in his tone made the firelight seem heavier, more alive. The second sister leaned forward, her voice trembling. What does that mean? To you, to your kind? The human's dark eyes reflected the fire. His voice grew stronger. It means we do not abandon. It means we rise again and again even when the world calls us weak. It means we fight not for pride but for each other. The flames snapped, sending sparks into the night. The sisters fell silent. His words were simple, yet they cut deeper than any blade. The eldest tried to resist the pull of his meaning. Words, nothing more. You are one man, alone. What can one human do in a world like this? The man's eyes met hers. There was no anger, only calm truth. One human can stand when others fall. And sometimes, that is enough. The eldest turned away, but her hands trembled. She could not forget how his hand had pulled her from death only hours before. The youngest's voice was soft, almost a whisper. The king, he chose you. Why? Why did he make us serve you? What does he see in you? The human said nothing at first. He looked to the stars above the wasteland, bright and endless. His silence stretched long, almost unbearable. At last he answered, I do not know. The words surprised them. No pride, no false claim. Only truth, but I will find out, he added, his voice steady. And when I do, the world will change. The sisters shivered, not from cold, but from the weight in his voice. They felt something stir inside them, something unfamiliar, respect perhaps, or fear. The second sister broke the silence with a bitter laugh, though it lacked her usual cruelty. Strange. A human teaching us pride is nothing, a human saving us when we thought ourselves above him. The king's punishment cuts deeper than we knew. The eldest clenched her jaw, fighting the cracks in her arrogance, but her eyes betrayed her thoughts. She had seen his strength. She had felt his hand save her. No matter how she tried, she could not call him weak anymore. The youngest sister leaned closer to the fire, her eyes locked on him. You are not like the humans we heard of in stories. They said humans were soft, fragile, always begging. But you are different. The man shook his head. I am not different. I am simply human. You have been told lies because lies are easier to believe than truth. The fire burned lower, its light flickering on their faces. The sisters did not reply. Each of them was lost in thought, struggling against the storm inside their hearts. The wasteland wind howled beyond the ruins. The fire hissed as sparks rose into the night sky. The human closed his eyes, resting at last, but his presence was still heavy, as if even in sleep he carried unseen power. The sisters sat awake, their minds restless. They remembered his words, simple, sharp, unshakable. Because I am human. That night, for the first time, the sisters no longer laughed at him. They no longer mocked. Something had shifted in their hearts, though they could not yet name it. But deep within, they knew the king's strange command was not madness. It was purpose, and this human was not ordinary. The fire burned low. The wasteland waited, and the trials were far from over. Days passed as the strange group pushed deeper into the wasteland. Each trial tested them, storms of sand, rivers of fire, and shadows that whispered madness. Through it all, the human never faltered. He walked with calm strength, his eyes fixed forward, while the sisters, once proud and cruel, began to follow without protest. By now, their hearts had changed. The eldest no longer mocked him, though pride still clung to her like armor. The second sister spoke less, her sharp tongue dulled by respect she could not hide. The youngest often walked close to him, her eyes searching for answers in his silence. On the seventh night, the wasteland opened into a vast plain of black stone. At its center stood ruins older than any kingdom, pillars carved with symbols glowing faintly in the dark. The air felt heavy, thick with power. Even the wind seemed afraid to pass through. The human stopped. His gaze lingered on the ruins as if they called to him. The sisters felt unease crawl over their skin. The eldest whispered, "What is this place?" The man did not answer. Instead, he stepped forward, the firelight of the ruins flickering in his eyes. The youngest grabbed his arm. "Wait, tell us. Why are we here? Why did the king send you and us with you? What is the truth?" The man looked at her hand, then at her face. His voice was quiet but sharp. "You already know. You have felt it since the beginning." The sisters exchanged uneasy glances. The ruins glowed brighter as the human walked among them. Strange energy pulsed in the air. The eldest could no longer hold her silence, no more riddles. "Tell us, human. Who are you? Why does the king trust you with us?" Why would he shame us for your sake? The man stopped before the tallest pillar. His hand brushed across its surface. Symbols lit beneath his touch, glowing like stars. The ground trembled. He turned to them, his face calm but his eyes burning with hidden fire. Because I carry something your kind has forgotten. Something your king remembers, though you do not. The sisters stepped back as the ruins answered his presence. Light spread across the stone, forming patterns that circled around him like a crown. The second sister whispered, fear in her voice. What are you? The man's voice rose, firm and unshaken. I am human. And humanity is not weak. It is not small. It is not less than you. Long ago, humans fought beside your kind, when the stars were at war. We bled, we endured, and we stood where no one else could stand. Your king remembers this. That is why he chose me. That is why he bound you to me. The sisters froze. Their hearts raced as the weight of his words sank in. The youngest shook her head. But humans, the stories say you are fragile, powerless. Lies. The man interrupted, his voice cutting like a blade. Lies told by those who feared us. Lies told to keep us small. But truth cannot be buried forever. Your king knows it, and now so will you. The ruins blazed with light, washing over them. For a moment they saw visions. Humans standing shoulder to shoulder with alien warriors, their courage unshaken, their strength unbroken. They saw battles across burning skies. Humans wielding power not of weapon but of spirit. The sisters gasped, their eyes wide with shock. Pride crumbled inside them, replaced by awe. The eldest spoke, her voice low. Then the king's punishment? It was never only for us. It was to remind us of what humans truly are. The man gave a single nod. Yes, he sent you not to shame you, but to open your eyes. To teach you what your people forgot. And to prepare you for what is coming. A silence hung heavy after his words. The sisters' hearts pounded with fear and wonder. They had mocked him, despised him, called him weak. But now, standing in the glow of ancient truth, they saw him differently. Not as a servant, not as a lesser being, but as something they could not deny. The youngest whispered, her voice trembling with awe. You carry the fate of more than yourself. You carry us too. The man looked at her, then at all three. His expression was calm, but his words burned with weight. I carry the fate of all, and from this point forward, so do you. The ruins dimmed, the visions fading, but the sisters knew they would never forget what they had seen. The king's punishment had become revelation. Their fate was no longer just theirs. It was tied to this human, to his hidden strength, to a truth greater than pride. For the first time, the sisters bowed their heads not from fear, but from respect. The man turned back to the horizon, his silhouette strong against the night. The trials are not over. The greatest one lies ahead, and when it comes you must stand with me, or fall with the rest. The wasteland wind carried his words far into the dark, a warning and a promise. The ruins faded into darkness, but the truth they revealed stayed alive in the sisters' hearts. For the first time in their proud lives, they could not look down on the human. They had mocked him, despised him, even wished for his failure. Yet now they walked behind him in silence, not because the king commanded it, but because they felt something strange. Respect. The wasteland stretched before them, its winds howling like voices of the dead. The sisters no longer complained of dust or thirst. Their eyes remained fixed on the human who led them, his steps steady, his back unbending. Something inside them whispered that their survival was no longer only in his hands. It was tied to his purpose. Days later, the final trial came. The plain shook with the roar of an army. From the horizon rose dark creatures, taller than towers, their bodies twisted by shadows, their eyes burning with endless hate. The sisters froze, their blades shaking in their hands. Never had they seen such terror. The eldest whispered, her voice breaking, "We cannot fight this. Even the king's armies would fall." But the human stepped forward, alone, unarmed, facing the storm. His voice rang out, calm yet commanding. "Stand with me." The sisters hesitated. Fear clawed at their hearts, pride begged them to flee. Yet his voice pulled them like gravity. Slowly, one by one, they moved to his side. The dark army charged. The earth cracked beneath their weight. The sky turned red with fire. The sisters raised their blades, ready to die, but the human lifted his hand. From the ruins behind them, the ancient light returned, flowing like rivers into his body. His eyes blazed with the fire of stars. His voice thundered across the battlefield. "I am human, and humanity does not bow. The ground exploded with light. The creatures screamed as power tore through them, breaking their shadows, burning their hate into ash. The sisters shielded their eyes, trembling in awe. The man stood in the center of the storm, his strength not born of weapons but of will. When the light faded, silence fell. The wasteland lay empty, the dark army destroyed. Only the human remained standing, his chest rising with steady breaths. The sisters dropped to their knees. Their pride was gone, shattered by truth. The eldest, once cruelest of them all, lowered her head. We were blind. Forgive us. The second sister placed her blade at his feet. Our lives are yours, not by command, but by choice. The youngest, her eyes filled with tears, whispered, You changed us. You showed us what we could not see. From this day we will stand with you. The human looked at them. His eyes held no pride, no gloating. Only calm acceptance, then rise. For I never wanted you to kneel. I only wanted you to see. The sisters rose, their hearts lighter than before. They looked at him not as a servant, not as a punishment, but as something greater. An anchor, a guide, a force they could trust. When they returned to the palace, the nobles gathered in shock. They had expected broken sisters, a failed human, perhaps even death. Instead, they saw 3 daughters walking with heads bowed, their arrogance gone, and a human whose presence filled the hall with unseen power. The king rose from his throne, his eyes sharp with knowing. So you have returned. Tell me, what have you learned? The eldest stepped forward, her voice firm. We learned that pride is weakness, that honor is not in blood but in action. The second followed. We learned that humans are not less. They are strength hidden in silence. The youngest bowed her head. And we learned that your command was not punishment but gift. You gave us truth, the hall filled with gasps. The king's face remained calm, but his eyes glowed with approval. He turned to the human. And you? What do you carry now? The man's voice was steady. The same as before, humanity, nothing more. Nothing less, the king smiled faintly. And that is enough. The nobles whispered, shaken by what they had seen, by what they now believed. A human had stood where no one else dared, and even the proudest of daughters now bowed to him. The king's final words echoed across the hall. From this day, the fate of our empire is forever tied to the fate of humankind. The sisters stood at the human's side, no longer his mockers, no longer his prisoners, but his allies. Their pride had been broken, but in its place grew something far stronger, loyalty. And the human, silent as always, carried the weight of destiny in his calm steps. The story of the 3 sisters and the human spread through the empire. Some called it a punishment, others called it a miracle, but all agreed on one truth: humanity was not weak. Humanity was the spark that could change the stars. From that day, their fate was forever changed. And their story had only just begun.